Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar on Grant Writing 101 with Resourceful Communities. I'm Krista Westervelt. I'm Associate Director with Partners in Health and Wholeness for Healthy Aging. We're glad to have you with us tonight. I'm going to open us up with a short prayer. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to be in community tonight. May the day's worries leave us for a time, that we may learn together with receptive hearts and minds. In your love and your grace, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
You can go ahead and pop up the slides for me. I think we'll go ahead and skip to the what we do slide. So just a really quick overview for those who are new to Partners in Health and Wholeness. We're an initiative of the North Carolina Council of Churches. The work that we do is intended to bridge issues of faith, health, and justice, to empower faith communities to improve their health and well-being, and to partner and support grassroots efforts to challenge injustice. How we do that is by providing resources, connections, and support to faith communities for their health initiatives. We work to establish trust and partnership with faith communities. And we offer mini grants and community grants to financially support faith communities' health initiatives. And at the end of the program, there'll be a little bit of information about that. And why we do that: we believe that all people are loved by God, that God cares about the wholeness of humanity and communities, mind, body, and spirit. And our work in partnership with faith communities will improve health outcomes of people across the state. So those are our values, and we hope that you share them with us. Tonight's guests with us from Resourceful Communities are Dave Walker, who's the Associate Director of Resourceful Communities, and Matthew Rouse, Food and Faith Coordinator with Resourceful Communities. And we're so glad to have y'all with us. And we'll kick that over to you. I think you might want to, there's probably some way to sort of expand the slides a little bit, so we're not seeing some of the extra slides at the bottom. But, yeah. Yes, perfect.
It works.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I'll hand it over.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am Matthew Rouse. As she shared, I'm Faith and Food Coordinator, and our Associate Director, Dave Walker. We'll be tag teaming this event tonight. We'll try to we have condensed this into a very compact presentation because of time, to be a good steward of that. And so I'm going to go ahead and jump in to Grant Writing 101. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we're glad to be with PHW for this great time of sharing about grant writing. Again, we're from Resourceful Communities, and just a snapshot about what we do at Resourceful Communities. We are a program of a larger organization, an environmental conservation organization called the Conservation Fund. And at Resourceful Communities, we provide small grants and assistance to kind of grassroots organizations, nonprofits, and rural United Methodist churches to help with various outreach and projects that they have. We have a mission of the triple bottom line, which addresses economic development, environmental stewardship, and social justice. Those three aims is what we look to for the projects that we support. And we, again, work in rural North Carolina, many of the most distressed areas and communities within North Carolina. And our network has over 500 partners, grassroots organizations, churches, and partners. So for tonight, we've shared who we are. We want to talk about Fundraising 101, how we are able to find funding and then meet funding priorities. And then we'll go through a grant writing checklist of an overview, issues and goals, project description, and then we'll hopefully have opportunity for Q&A. We may have to stay a little bit longer, but Dave and I are willing to stay post the normal hour time for those that may have additional questions. After we have the training tonight, you'll be able to receive not only this PowerPoint presentation, but also an annotated 990 PF form. There's an IRS form for organizations to share their information of who they give, board of directors, funding information. We'll give that, and we'll kind of give a snapshot of what that is, just in case you don't know what a 990 is. So where do you find funding? Where do you start? That may be the big question for a lot of people. And again, Resourceful Communities, we are an organization that always believes that the wisdom is in the room. So don't think that Dave and myself, that we are the experts. We do believe those of you that are here with us are probably persons that have applied for multiple grants, may know some things. So please chime in towards the end of the presentation so that you can share all that you may know. But where do you start? Who has the money? Typically, it's where you shop. It's where you may enter on a daily basis. Employers, companies, banks, foundation, churches, denominational entities, and even individuals. We have just a few on the screen: Food Line, Walmart, Target. I live in Winston-Salem, and so there's Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation that is here. The Catholic churches, and I can go on and on. Kate B. Reynolds, so many different other places that you go. And like I said, it's places that you shop, that you go on a daily basis that you may not necessarily realize. But when you decide to really start chiming in on where you're going to find those funding, it's as simple as Googling. Just Google whatever county you may find yourself, top 25 employers in Forsyth County, Orange County, Guilford County, wherever you may be. That is going to be a place to start just to find out where you can find funding for grants. Keywords that we've kind of included there: employer, corporate, community giving, grants, and funding. And always remember banks. Yes, banks give loans, but they also give grants. There, of course, you have the big banks. You have your Truist, your Bank of America, your Wells Fargo. And a lot of those larger banks want to make a community presence, a local presence. So don't think just because they're the big bank and they're not the local community bank that they may not have grant funding for your project. Again, I'll talk about it later, but just as long as you do your homework on the organization that you're seeking funding from, you'll be surprised at times who's got the money there for you to apply for. At Resourceful Communities, we have something called a corporate giving guide. And again, you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. But in that corporate giving guide, we break up the state of North Carolina where you can find regionally, say you're in Western North Carolina, it breaks them up in Western, Central, and Eastern North Carolina. So you can find the specific geographical location that you're located, that area, there may be a company that supports you just because you are in Central, just because you're in Eastern, just because you're in Western. And all that information can be found on our corporate giving guide. So it's a good resource that we have accessible to anyone. And I hope you will take advantage of it, because again, you can even put some parameters in for your specific type of project. And so we try to use it as a tool and a resource to help those in a quick way and in a concise way. And again, there are foundations and various in North Carolina Community Foundation, county foundations, and then Google is our best friend. So always just Google and try to find those top foundations in North Carolina. And there are a few here within our state that don't have necessary exclusions that I'm going to talk about momentarily. So funding to do what and how much? Your funding priorities, and this can't be stressed enough, take the time to do your homework. Understand the company or the organization that you're seeking funding from. If they are specific to the health sector, know that. Don't have an educational project if this organization, this funder, is focused as a priority in healthcare. So do your homework on the organization. Find out, do they want a community impact? Are they looking for a bigger focus? So if they are looking for the small project that's going to impact a certain town or a certain community versus a larger impact, larger group of people, larger demographic, do your homework and seeing where they want to go. And then understand there's a difference between your general operating costs and a project. A lot of funders don't fund just simply operating costs, utilities, and salaries, even though some projects may have line items for stipends or staffing or whatnot. But just general operating, most grants don't go to cover that. So just keep that in mind when you're looking into funding and funders. And who do they give to? Going back to doing your research. small nonprofits versus established grantees. That United Way, for example, is an established grantee. Some may just give to those larger groups, or some may give to the smaller nonprofit, to the church, to the community development corp, whatever the case may be. Again, the geographical focus. Some persons, I know one of our organizations that we work with is the Dogwood Foundation. They just give directly specifically to the most, I think 18, Dave, if I'm mistaken, Western counties in North Carolina. So there's a geographical focus there. You may have a grand idea in Eastern North Carolina, but you don't need to invest the time into applying to Dogwood because it's specific to those 18 most counties, westernmost counties of North Carolina. And so who did it give to? Oftentimes religious organizations may be excluded, but religious organizations aren't the only exclusions that some corporations have. And I'll kind of snapshot that in the next slide. And how do you know this information? How do you, there's so much, there's so many, how do you find this out? Simply, going to a website, and most companies should be producing an annual report, and you should see their financial status in the sense of their expenditures and income and where they're giving their money to. And that's where that foundation's 990 PF, you can see board of directors, you can see highest paid employees, you can see where their money is going, how much, the donations, and just on and on. And a way to push even more of looking into funding being a fit. Not every funding opportunity will be the right fit for your program. It's just like that illustration shows, trying to put that square peg into the round hole. Just because you have a good idea doesn't mean you need to go out and apply just because of a company having a grand opportunity. If it's not a fit for you, don't invest the energy and the time to apply, because you may miss out on something else because of that. Dave's going to get into more of that in the practicality piece as we kind of continue. Does your organization qualify? I'm not going to push this too much because we kind of covered this with the exclusions of finding on that organization's website, doing your homework to say, am I a religious organization? Maybe they don't give to an LLC, a regional specific area, just as we referenced West versus East, individuals, capital projects. Exclusions are typically found on a website. So if you just take the time to read, if we had more time, we would do a test to show you what a bad call to a funder might sound like versus a quote good call. But take the time. If you do your homework and do the digging, you'll find everything that you need. Now I'm going to give it over to Dave as continues.
Yeah, it's something at Resourceful Communities, and I'm sure it's true for partners in health and wholeness, is that, we'd love to talk with folks about our funding priorities as grant makers and talk through your project. And so, we don't want folks wasting their time. And we may know of good funders who are a good fit for your project. It's so great when funders will fund general operations, the day-to-day running of a nonprofit, but many funders, from large federal grants down to your small community foundation, will have strict rules about only funding projects. And so we're going to run through a few quick exercises to unpack this, and feel free to use your chat. I know I love Girl Scout cookies. I hope you do too. Can you use the example, if you're selling Girl Scout cookies and somebody comes up, a customer comes up and they tell you, I love chocolate. And so which ones do you try to sell them? That top row right there, the Venturefuls, the Thin Mints, samosas, tagalongs. Like when a customer tells you they really like chocolate, then you know which ones to go to. And so this could be similar to a funder who on their website says, like, I love food. Like, they tell you what they want to fund. And so then if we go to the next one, we have a customer, they come up, they're a little different, they're a little more picky. And the customer comes up to your table and they say, I don't like coconut, I don't like caramel, I don't like peanuts. And so what do? it's a little tougher. You look at the lemon ups, you look at the s'mores. This is really similar to a funder where they might have a list where they say on their website, we don't fund buildings, we don't fund staff salaries, we don't fund general operating support or indirect costs. And so sometimes instead of telling you what they really like, they tell you what they don't like. And then there's some customers who are just absolutely picky. They come up and they just want to tell you that they're not interested in what you're selling. The same could be true for funders. If you have a church project, you're applying on behalf of a church and the funder won't fund churches, then it may be best to look at another grant opportunity, because there surely are grant opportunities out there that'll fit you, and use your time in the most efficient way. Okay, and so we'll switch it up. We'll use some examples with actual funders, using Partners in Health and Wholeness and Duke Energy Foundation as examples. There's a food pantry, and they want to buy healthy local produce for their clients. They deliver the boxes. The boxes are great. They're beautiful boxes. They're tailored to each client's health goals. And the food pantry also gives out recipe cards. They do cooking demonstrations. They do all these different activities. But of these different activities, some activities may be better to pitch to Duke Energy Foundation, and some may be better to pitch to PHW. And so here I've broken it out for you. The green ones, the ones that are a little bit more environmental friendly, supporting local farmers and their soil. That would be a good thing, a good story to tell to Duke Energy Foundation, who the foundation says they're all about environmental stewardship. And so they probably also care about reducing food miles, reducing a carbon input, where PHW is really concerned about the health of North Carolinians. So projects that might alleviate diabetes, or might provide nutrition for fresh food items, getting healthy food into neighborhoods that don't have healthy food options. Those are all things to lift up to a health-focused funder.
So now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of grants. And again, I'm sure wisdom is in the room. So I'm not an expert, just trying to give you kind of a brief overview when you start writing, when you start truly getting into the work of putting a typical grant application together. And so before you even start, before you begin, get your documents ready. In a sense, if you want to call it the big three, we can. But what is most important is having your IRS determination letter, which establishes you as a nonprofit, as a 501c3 organization. And for those, denominationally, some of the structures have group rulings where persons fall under multiple churches, rather fall under one umbrella. But there are some churches that don't have group rulings. There are some churches that may not have a 501c3 status. And so if that may be you, some funders will allow you to use a fiscal agent, having someone which has this information that you are connected to or connected with to a degree to serve as your fiscal agent, so that if you don't have that IRS determination letter as a 501c3, you still have an opportunity through that fiscal agent to apply. So that's very important, because typically most grantors, that's what they need and that's what they're looking for in order for them to stay compliant with the IRS. And then also current financial statements. Most, but not all funders will ask for this. This is not to say they're going to look and want your bank statements. That's a difference than financial statements. So making sure you're keeping accurate records of your income, your revenue, your expenditures, and where it's going, categorized have as an accurate and current statements as you can, so that you are able to share that information. Just want to be able to say you have money, you know how to handle money, you know where it's going, and you know how to record it, you know how to document it. And then also have a current list of your board of directors, your president, your VP, your secretary, treasurer, board members, whomever, how you have your board structured, make sure. So those are the big three that you need to have: that IRS determination letter, your financial records, and current board of directors. And as we kind of put as an asterisk, not every grant requires this document, but get them ready, get them prepared to submit them, because it would be a waste of your time on the application if you don't have those documents. You could go through the entire app and then get to the end and realize, wait a minute, I needed this, and maybe a waste of time and energy. And we want to avoid that as best we can. So after you have got your documentation together, then you want to describe your organization. Have just an overview of your organization. This section should introduce the funder to who you are and why you're qualified to carry out the proposed project that you have. It's kind of the who, what, when, why. So, we have those buzzwords, keywords, if you will, in red. When was your organization started? What's your mission or your purpose that your organization serves? Who are you serving? The number of people, is it number of youth, the number of elderly, persons that have barriers to employment, and then the geographical area that you serve, what county, what town, what even community, municipality, and then your major projects and your major programs and ministries. And so, I remember as writing, if you've written a thesis, a dissertation, I remember they said, always have your elevator pitch as to why you're doing what you're doing, why you're writing what you're writing. And kind of similar thing, even though it's not going to be something that you do verbally, even though you should have that, but this is something that you will always kind of need to give that overview of your organization, no matter where you find yourself along the grant writing journey. And I know this may be a little wordy on your screen. Don't worry, I'm not going to read all of this, but what we've provided, I wouldn't say we've given a bad example and a good. So this first one, I would say, is a real churchy example. So, when I say churchy, as we've highlighted, Union AMEZ has been on a mission to share the message of Jesus Christ. And that first sentence, if you look at that, the church was founded by Bishop Jones in his own living room and currently supports a membership of 74 Jesus followers, right? And then at the end, the last paragraph, we service community members from throughout our neighborhood. In total, the church touches the lives of over countless individuals a year. Countless. That doesn't quantify a number, right? And so that's the one example. But then when you look at the second example, that first sentence, Union Church was established in the year, not in Bishop Jones's living room, and currently supports a membership of not 74 Jesus followers, but 74 active members. And for 120 years, the church has been on the mission to share, serve, grow in the message of Jesus Christ. So you see how the dynamic changes between the two. And then that last paragraph, we service community members from throughout where? Specific, not the neighborhood, but Robeson County. In total, the church touches the lives of not countless persons, but there's a specific number that is tied over 400 unique individuals a year. So giving you an example of the two, the first example, again, not necessarily bad, but it's not as specific as it needs to be. And it has, within the church, we kind of have our own language. You know, I call it Christianese, however you want to classify it. But there's churchy language that, you know, you can use. And so understanding when you're writing grant documents or grant applications, you're talking to a much more broader audience. And so everybody doesn't talk like we may talk in church, or we may interact in church. And so we just have to be aware, especially when we're writing grant applications. So after you get your documents ready, after you describe your organization, then you need to start describing the issue. That is when you begin to address the community needs question. What does your community need? And when you begin to describe that issue, I know if you live in the community or the county or the area where I live, there are many issues. You know, you have health disparities. You may need affordable health care. You may have affordable housing, violence. I can go on and on and on. But when you're writing and preparing a grant application, you need to focus on one, no more than two issues for your project to address. Because when you have the focus of one, no more than two issues, that funder knows you have a focus on concentrating on just those items, whereas you're not trying to save the world by this grant. That's not necessarily going to happen. But if you focus on specific things, you will be able to address them, and they'll understand they have a scope, they have a focus, and that's what they're going to work toward. Be specific as you can. That being specific is not something that will hurt you, it will help you. Looking at these examples of poor health, that's a broad statement. But when you specifically say, you know what, we want to address the poor health in our community because we have a high diabetes rate or limited food access, that is being specific as to how to address health, because it could be mental health, it could be physical health, whatever. That it's just broad when you say poor health. So try to be as specific as possible, just like we have the education piece. We have poor educational outcomes versus literacy levels. You want to, yes, education, the outcomes are not where we want them to be, but it's because of the literacy rate. And you can even target a specific gender. You may say the literacy rate among boys ages 9 to 12. Be as specific as you can to set yourself apart and make your application unique. And use data to back up what you're saying. Storytelling is good and it's necessary, so you can sometimes get the point across, or that may be the starting place, whatever the case may be. But data is something that you can't argue with. And thankfully, we have that information. As you see, again, you'll get this slide. These are sources that you can use. As a pastor, I served a community, and for I think 3 times during my tenure as that pastor in a community, I worked with the community health assessment to gather that information for our county. And so every 3 years, I think a community health assessment is done. So it's information. Of course, this is the North Carolina website, but it will go to specific counties and give you, great information so that you can back up to say, yes, we need to address this health disparity, but this is why we need to address it, because we have the information for gender, for location, and so on and so forth. So I hope you'll be able to use these tools and these resources to look for some information as you're trying to address whether it's healthcare or food insecurity. As you continue to describe the issue in your application, realize it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel, that you can acknowledge that there are existing services there. And what your project may do is either fill in a gap from a project that's already there and a service that's already in your community. You may decide, you know what, instead of filling the gap, it may be a better fit for us to partner with the current organization that has an existing service already in the community. reaching hard to reach populations. That's what we're trying to do. What makes you unique? What sets you apart? As you see in the illustration, everybody may be at different levels, but you have that one person with the spear where the other persons have cubes. And so what will make you unique? And even if, let's just say, all four of those were cubes, and if one was red versus the blue, it still sets them apart. So find what makes your service unique by looking at what already exists and finding ways to either partner or fill the gap. And again, this is more of an example of your health data and food insecurity. It gives population specific information. It gives that last statement. I guess I'll read that. There are at least 8 other food pantries that serve our county. None of them are incorporating fresh local food offerings into their pantries at this time. That acknowledges that there is an existing resource or resources and how you can fill a gap. So always remember, think that way as best you can, be specific, have the data to back it up, and then find ways that you can help fill a gap.
So we're kind of following the path of a typical grant application. At the very top, they're going to ask you to tell about your organization and the work you do, and then what's the problem. And now we're at the part of like, what are you going to do about that problem? You know, what's your big thesis? What are your big goals? What kind of change do you hope to see? And it's such a common question for funders to say, what's there at the top? You know, what kind of change or result do you hope to see? And it can be such a big question. You know, of course, we want to end hunger and like alleviate poverty and improve the climate. But with this grant, we've only got 1 year and the opportunity is only 5,000 or 15,000. And so what do? We do like Matthew just said, we make it specific. We make it doable and measurable. And so here are some ways to do it. I really like tables and charts. And so the next several slides, we're going to have some tables and charts to show how this might look. So say you have an after-school program and you send kids home with a box of healthy food and recipe cards. You're applying to a food-focused funder, and for that funder, you'll want to focus on the improved food access as the goal. Because one, the funder doesn't fund literacy. But two, that word improved is really measurable. It's measurable where when you just say like better health, that's a lot harder to track. When we're looking at a 1-year grant for math and science scores to be improved among middle school students, you know, we know it's a 1-year grant. So when we're going to have to report the outcomes at the end of the year, at the end of the grant period, we really need to focus on the here and now. And so that's why improved skills, client satisfaction are the goals to focus on. Not focusing on what might happen in a few years, because right now we won't be able to report on those things. And so here's some ways to beef up those goals even more, making them even more doable and more measurable. So instead of just saying that you're going to increase healthy food options, we can say that we're going to increase healthy food access for 20 low-income families for the school year. What you have in that new goal statement is one, what you're going to do, two, how many people you're going to impact, and three, when you're going to do it. It's moving closer to a SMART goal, which maybe you'll have heard of. Goals show some kind of change that's going to happen, and your activities show how you're going to get there. For instance, your activity And one of these examples is managing a garden. But what will happen, what you hope to see, is that 10 families get access to fresh food from that garden CSA. So now we get to the part where we start to say, you know, how are we going to reach our goal? What kind of work are we going to do? And again, this is a place to be really specific and show that you really know what's going on in your community and how you're going to make it a better place. And so you're always going to be asked, you know, how are you going to do it? And the very best project descriptions for how you're going to do it include the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why. I can't tell you how important it is to be sure to include each of these. And I also think it's really important to be specific in how you're going to do it. It really gives the funder a feel for what the project's going to be like, and it lets them know why it matters to you. And then last, it gives them the confidence that you're going to be able to complete it. And so for the next section, I want you to put your funder hat on as if you're a funder, and think through these next examples as if you're a funder. As a funder, you'll want to see ideas that are really clear. And as a funder, you're making an investment. You have so much money that you can give out each year, and you want to see good work happen from that investment. And so here's a proposal from AMEZ. And I'm going to read it through to you. Union AMEZ sees an opportunity to create a lot of community benefit with our project. We will advance health in our community through local food. We see a lot of families with young kids coming to the pantry. Youth have a lot of influence on household diet, so we want to instill healthy habits in them early. 25% of children in our area are worried about hunger. We are a tier 1 county, so the need's great. We also want to grow fresh vegetables and fruits to include in the pantry. All of these goals can be attained by working closely with several committed partners, including community volunteers, local government, local businesses, and universities. And so I think if we could go back, Matthew, I'm sorry. You know, I think it has a lot of really good intentions as a project. And I can tell that the community, the organization really cares about making a difference in their community. But I'm also a little unsure of what the project is. And so this is where it can be helpful to get another set of eyes, somebody who hasn't written this. Maybe it's a friend, or it could even be a funder, like you're applying to an organization and you want to run it by their grant officer before you apply. Many are happy to do that. And you'll come away with an outside perspective of how you can make your project proposal a little bit more clear. And so the next one, the organization AMEZ, they made a few changes to their proposal. They went back, and just glancing at it, I can see that it's improved a lot. And so it's color-coded, but in that first paragraph, you see the why, the purple text. And that's a really good place in the first paragraph to put the why. You know, we often call it the hook because it just hooks somebody in who wants to read it. You hear why it's important. 120 families are being served by the food pantry at AMEZ, and the participants at the pantry are requesting fresh food items. I mean, that shows that you have community engagement and buy-in, real demand for this kind of project. You see the who. You see that Becky Smith, the church food pantry coordinator, is going to be responsible for this. And not only that, she has connections with farmers through cooperative extension and soil and water. You see the what? They're going to be purchasing 600 pounds of local food every other week. You see the where, they're going to do it at the Baptist church. They're going to use their own van. And so I'd encourage you to use color coding like this or whatever system's best for you, so that you can really make sure that you check all of those boxes. You get the who, the what, the where, the when, and the why. This level of detail really helps projects stand out, and it gives the funder an opportunity to step into the project, really see that it's well thought out, and that you as an applicant are going to be able to complete the project. And then at the end of every grant proposal is going to be a section about how are you going to do evaluation. And that's something to not put off to the end, but to really think about, how are we going to document, the success of our project and share it out to the funder. Also share it out to our community. Many times when you apply for a grant the second time around, the funder will go back to your progress report, your end of the year report, and see, what happened to the previous funding. And so this is a great opportunity to celebrate with your funder and your community all the progress that you've made over the last year towards meeting your goals. But when you do this, you need to make sure that it's manageable and that each of these points, your goal, what kind of data will be collected, how you'll collect the data, that each of them are in alignment and that each of them are doable. So again, I really like charts, and I think that they're helpful in seeing that alignment and that seeing things clearly. Say you have a food pantry, and the food pantry it wants to distribute fresh food and give out recipe cards and host a cooking demonstration. A change or goal that would happen could be that the clients come away from the cooking demonstrations with improved knowledge of how to use vegetables. And so if you state that as the goal of the project, what you're going to do is measure the percentage of participants that learned a new skill. And a way that you can do that is through surveys. It's a really doable and great way of evaluation. Show some goal, I'm sorry, if you could go back. Show some goal that shows a change and improved knowledge. And then you ask folks how satisfied they are. It's much harder to track a behavior or a condition, something like a health assessment, because it takes a lot of time and effort, resources, and trust with your clients to be able to measure that successfully. Also, when you're talking about health, it can be potentially invasive and burdensome on your clients to measure their health changes. And so I'd really encourage you to focus on level 1 and level 2 types of change. Things like skills and knowledge or customer satisfaction, especially if it's only for a small grant or just for 1 year. And it's easy to do skills or knowledge or consumer satisfaction through surveys or through conversations with your clients. And so a way to organize that, again, when you're preparing for your grant, you can use a chart so that you make sure that you line up the goal with what you're gonna measure and how you'll collect that information. And then I see it kind of like a puzzle that you're putting together. And so you take those little blocks from the goal and the measurement and how you're going to collect it, and you paste them together like you're putting together a puzzle into a paragraph. And when all else fails, use pictures. We love to get pictures at the end of the year from our grantees. Often when you're writing a grant application, you can include pictures or videos about your project. And that really gives the funder a sense of, you know, who you are working with, what the landscape looks like, that people are bought in and will participate in your project. 3 or 4 is a good number. It gives you an opportunity to pick the best ones and to show that your project is at work and the impact that it makes. And then I want to say we have more information on our website, and I'm gonna put into the chat the Resourceful Communities website. And on that is a place for you to sign up for our newsletter. We have workshops that happen throughout the year. We have a small grants program for rural grassroots nonprofits and faith-based organizations. It'll open in January and close in February. Matthew and I would love to talk with y'all about that. We also have a few trainings online. We have one on evaluation, we have one on budgeting, several others. One funny thing about our website is that you can easily get sucked into the conservation fund and grizzly bears and majestic landscapes in the West. On the right-hand side of the webpage, that's the Resourceful Communities information. So that's where our signing up for the newsletter, the webinars, the small grants information is. It'll be on the right-hand side. I think we're gonna turn it over to our friends at Partners in Health and Wholeness and talk about their grant. And then Matthew and I are happy to stay on and answer any questions that folks might have. I know we kind of blew through the last 45 minutes, and we'd love to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Dave and Matthew, for that wonderful information. I think that's going to be helpful to a lot of folks. And good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Hill. I'm with the North Carolina Council of Churches and work on the Partners in Health and Wholeness Initiative. And I specifically do opioid response and harm reduction initiatives, as well as tobacco and nicotine education and initiatives around that as well. And we do have some grant opportunities right now, which you may or may not know. We have focus area specific grants, which are for the 2 initiatives that I just spoke about. Opioid response and tobacco and nicotine, and those are up to $2,000 grants. And then we have our regular grant cycle open as well for health initiatives. The cycle that's open for just our regular health initiatives currently is only for United Methodist denomination, as well as AME, AMEC, and CME. However, the focus area specific is open to anyone. In order to apply for one of our grants, you have to fill out the collaborative pledge, and that is on our website, and I'm going to put the website in the chat. And so you just go there, you complete the collaborative pledge and the clergy commitment. Once the collaborative pledge is approved, you'll get an email with a link to a grant application. And all the grants that we currently have open are only open until November 30th. So you have to submit your collaborative pledge, if you haven't already, by November 16th in order to apply for a grant by November 30th. And see if I can, there we go, thank you. So to complete the collaborative pledge, or to be eligible for that, you just have to be a faith community that worships together in a physical location in the state of North Carolina. And then also, we will verify that before we approve it. And if you've already submitted a collaborative pledge, that collaborative pledge is good for 12 months. And so as far as applying for a mini grant, once that process, the collaborative pledge process is complete, you have 12 months from the time that you submitted the collaborative pledge to apply for a mini grant. But again, the current cycle is only open through November 30th. And the other criteria for receiving a mini grant is that you cannot have already received a mini grant from us in the last 12 months. If it's been more than 12 months, you're welcome to apply. But if it's been less than that, then you're not going to be eligible. And for any questions that you have about this, if they're focus area specific about opioid response or tobacco and nicotine, you can reach out to me. But if you have questions specifically about the process and how to apply and how to complete the collaborative pledge, please reach out to Stephanie at the email on your screen here, phwinfo@ncchurches.org. And then before we close, we just want to open the floor for any questions that you may have for Krista or myself, as well as for Dave or Matthew. And you can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat.
Reverend Thompson, you can go ahead if you'd like.
Thank you. I'm with the AME Zion Church, and I noticed that sometimes there are openings that are specifically for AME Zion, etc. And does it still apply that if you have gotten a grant that you cannot get another grant that particular year? And could you also confirm when the year ends? Is it calendar year or something else?
Krista, tell me if I say something wrong, but that is correct. It has to be, you can only apply for one grant in a 12-month period. And so it's not a calendar year, it's 12 months from when you received your grant.
Okay.
That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
White, you can, if you have your question.
Yes, I have a general question, then a specific question. I would just like to know if there is still some type of listing of grants that are available in North Carolina that can be found. I do know that some time ago, like in the 80s or 90s, there used to be an annual, very large book that was entitled North Carolina Giving, that was available, you could find in libraries. I do recall that maybe at the beginning of the 2000s, perhaps, they said that they were going to stop publishing, but I thought that they would at least be online somewhere. And I have made various searches for it, and I have not been successful in finding anything like that that's available these days. And I'm just wondering if does anybody know anything about it, or whether or not there may be archives of it, because just the listing of the hundreds, looks like, if I can remember correctly, of organizations that were funding organizations in North Carolina, it was almost incredible. But you know, I can't find anything like that now. Does anyone have any suggestion about that?
That's a great question. And when we send out the slides and the additional information, we'll be sure to include in that information, the email about the corporate giving guide, which is a really good place to start. It's focused on businesses that 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 have, like the Duke Energy Foundation, that have funding and specific to North Carolina and different counties. And it tells a little bit about those funders and what their priorities are. The NC Community Foundation is another great place to start, and talking with their staff who are in your county or represent your county, because their staff will have an idea of, you know, the different types of foundations. And there's so many, there are thousands in North Carolina, and what their priorities are. It can be hard to keep track of, but focusing on a geographic area like your community and connecting with the community foundation is a good place to start. I don't know if, yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to compile some other lists too that will offer funding to faith-based organizations, as long as it's not evangelism or proselytizing. And we can try to pull that together soon and send that out to folks as well. The deadlines vary, so there's some that they won't come around again until next year, but it could help you at least kind of get an idea of what's out there, if that's helpful. But yeah, it's a lot harder now to find some things, because sometimes there's different websites that want you to pay to access the grant listings and stuff. So it is a little bit of work to hunt for them more than it used to be. But it's whatever we can do to help with that, we certainly can.
Excuse me, did I understand you to say that you would provide us with that information or
I
listing?
can't give you a comprehensive list of everything, but I have found some additional grants that will that are offered to faith-based groups in North Carolina. Some are regional specific, some are county specific, and we could try to get those out to you soon as well. But again, I mean, it can be rather labor intensive to find those, and it definitely is. And so we try as we can to find them. So whatever information we do have, we can send that out along with the slides for this when we send the follow-up email from this program, for sure.
Okay, so there is a site, it's called ruralhealthinfo.org.
Mhm.
And there are grant opportunities on that site by state. If you would like to take a look at that. Whoever had that question, I'm not sure, but you could take a look at that and see if there's anything that fits your need.
Thank you for sharing.
Uh-huh.
I think, yes, that's wonderful. I think, Jacqueline, did you have a question earlier, or did we answer that question?
I do have a question, but it might be answered already. Thanks to Matthew and Dave for such an incredibly informative, comprehensive presentation. I wanted to clarify, but I think I already know the answer. Mental health education is not currently eligible for many grants in the mountains outside of the denominations that were listed. Is that correct?
Correct, outside of the UMC, AME, AMEZ, CME currently. That's correct.
All
Which is
right.
not to say it won't be in the future, it's just as different funding that we receive shifts in just as, they kind of wonder how grants sort of work the behind the scenes, like having to target things the ways that funders need us to target them is a lot of what's going on. But we do hope at some point to be able to pivot through the different focus areas so that we can do that for folks, for sure. Thank you for that question.
Good evening. This is Mary Worsley, and I noticed that you all have the overdose response grant writing workshop that occurred a week ago. I was interested in knowing, are those slides available from that workshop?
Yes, the recording is on our website.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Also, the slides that you showed tonight, will those be sent to us, or are they available?
We can send those to Partners in Health and Wholeness to send out, and we'll send a longer version that has some extra slides about how to call a funder and ask them questions, how to read a 990, The slides are pretty self-explanatory, but we're happy, happy to answer any calls. Matthew and I are, if you have additional questions about the content.
Mhm. Is there a part 2, like grant writing 102?
That's a great idea, because there's a lot of information to digest. So we're certainly open to that if that's a thing that we could work out for sure. Especially as we hear questions from y'all as you start doing this work, and we find out like if there's a lot of common questions, a lot of common concerns that we're hearing, we'd be delighted to find ways to address those, because we want your health industries to be successful, and we want you to have the impact that you want to see in your communities. So we definitely want to partner with you as best we can on that front. For sure.
Tonight was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Nathan, for being here with us. Any other questions before we close? I want to be mindful of folks' time.
There is one in the chat, and it's about a mental health grant, and if they had applied and got turned down, could they reapply? I'm going to defer you to Stephanie, our colleague, and if you can email her, and she can give you a little bit more information about that, depending on when you applied and things like that, I think. But I'm going to put her email in the chat.
Yep. Yeah. If you have questions about a specific grant application that you made to PHW, definitely be in contact with Stephanie, and we can follow up specifically once we know what the specifics are. Not knowing right offhand kind of what the specifics were, we're hesitant to sort of answer very specific church-based application questions there, but we could definitely help on that. All right. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us. A lot of lovely messages in the chat thanking our guests tonight. Again, I want to thank Dave and Matthew for being here with us tonight. Just high quality, really helpful, tangible information that I think is going to really equip our faith communities to do even more work and have greater impact. So thank you. We'll just close with a brief benediction. As we leave this space of learning and fellowship, may we carry forth the wisdom and inspiration we've gained tonight in service of our shared humanity, reflecting the image of God in which we all were made. In gratitude, we pray. Amen.